one thing that I noticed with your mixes is the depth. So let me say this. When it comes to depth with you, I want to understand how you are going about like kind of just implementing that into your mix. Because I'll be honest with you, it was like an R&B record that we had that you sent back. And her vocal just felt like so pushed. It was so far back in the mix, and the low end felt way more forward. And I can feel that relationship. And she felt like she was in like this really like weird room. How are you going about like accomplishing like depth and stuff like that? Especially with you being in the box too. Like how are you going about like accomplishing that?
Well, it's I always tell people you're fighting voltage. You know, you're fighting a mathematical battle to get as much information before 0 dB full scale. So my first, because I didn't do this in the beginning, and there wasn't a need to until Serban took us to Mach 9. And when I realized we had to play at Mach 9, I said to myself, okay, whenever something is hitting at the same time and it's masking and they're in the same frequency range, I'm dipping everything. I'm dipping one's going to win, one's going to lose.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's the carve out. It's the like you'll have a bass line, right? And then here comes some roads that are like 300, 400, 500 hertz. And you're saying to yourself, all right, man, this sounds incredible. This sounds amazing.
Right.
But if you simply unmask that crossover point where the two instruments meet, all of a sudden it opens up.
Right.
That's why, like, back in the day, I would walk into, because I was be his assistant for the day, but an Andy Wallace mix.
Okay.
And he'd use nothing but the SSL. And it would always be reducing. And the mix would sound. And then, so me being a audio nerd, sneaking in like, all right, let me take all these EQs out to see what the fuck, because all he did was EQ.
Yeah. Right.
Change the game.
Right.
Because you got to understand, you have all this information, and if this information is masking other instruments, it's like, I didn't even know that instrument was there. It's like, yeah, because the strings was fucking killing it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So just, example that everyone knows with the bass, it's like if the kick and the bass are hitting at the same, like you'll have something, when drummers will play the kick and the snare at the same time, and they'll hit, and then the bass line will hit, and the vocals hitting, everything's hitting at the same time. So it's like you're not going to see any depth with regards to volume level without helping yourself out. And then the other thing is, which a lot of people do not study and do not do, like you have to study reverb. Reverb is so important because it's like reverb now. Like I can tell the distance between you and I right now in this live room just by the fact of what's going on with the reverb and what's bouncing off these walls. Right. So it's the same thing. So when I started really buckling down on early reflections, it changed everything.
Speaking of,
I hear that.
Got to. Hold on. No, I got to. Speaking of the early reflections, you have in the I don't know if it's True Verb or just True Verb. You have, and literally I took it from you, with my early panner. Yeah. That whole thing like was mind-boggling. And that's why I got to the depth thing with you, because that simple plugin, which is moving with the early reflections, that was nuts.